So, Rosario, as we talk about the broke broker, what does that title mean, right? When we initially thought about that, we're like, oh my God, so many of us that are in the industry, that are in real estate, can relate to that. What does that mean for you?
To me, broke broker means, at the end of the day, what do you have? You have really nothing to show for it. You're out there hustling every day. You're transactional minded. You're working for the next deal. But God forbid something happens tomorrow. What foundation have you built for yourself and your family?
Okay, so my question is this: your background happens to be an REO broker,
yes,
right? Somebody who would be considered very successful by any standards. You won the national awards, the state awards, the whole nine yards, right? 2,700 transactions in a 6-7 year period to show for it. So those are significant big numbers, right? I came from a background where I was completely broke, and a lot of us have gone through that process. And then I was the guy who used to do cold calling. Everybody in the office used to laugh at me, and I had no other option. I didn't tell them that, hey, I have no center of influence. I have my parents don't live here. I don't know a lot of people, so it's not like I wanted to cold call. People thought it was a choice. It wasn't a choice. It was either that or basically go back to working for somebody making $15 an hour. And that was not what I wanted. So I was like, if I have to hustle, that's what I did. And all I did purely for 5-6 years is every single day, 5-6 hours a day, pound the phone, call FISBOs, cancels. Now that got me 30 to 40 listings at a time. And I was the listing agent, right? On all appearances, I would not, if somebody had called me a broke broker, I would have said, how dare you? Look at what I do. My 30 listings, my 40, 80 sales for the year, right? And yet, if, January 1st, or I should say December 31st was a very miserable day for me. And that's really where, at least for me, this comes from. Because I did not party on 31st. Because I knew the next year I had to repeat the same process over again. And I think when a few of our fellow brokers who do well, they work hard, the good old American dream, right? When you work hard, you're supposed to have something to show for it. I think the first year or two, you're just pure excitement.
Yeah.
Come year 3 and 4, you're like, oh my God, I got to do it over again. Any relation to that?
Absolutely. So I think I am the poster child of the broke broker.
I think we can all relate to that,
because
right?
When you get into the business, you think, okay, I'm going to set a goal. I became the when I guy. When I sell 50.
Right.
When I sell 100. When I sell 300. When I sell 500. And then I found myself being the top broker. And then I found myself being ranked 4th nationally. But when I built nothing, because every January 1st I had to restart. And I think that the facade of being a real estate broker is just hit goals. Hit goals and you'll be fine. But the reality is you're not fine. It takes money to get there. And when you get there, you have to start over again.
And I think that was the biggest thing. Like, brokerage is a great industry from a real estate, owning an office, being a great agent, right? It's a great industry. You can start literally with nothing and make a pretty good buck. As long as you keep hustling, you can make a pretty good buck. And that's something I think later on in the recording I want to kind of touch on a little bit, is kind of the changes that we're seeing in the industry, right? The future, I'm not sure I'm that excited about it, quite honestly. But so who needs to listen to this message? I guess, would you say, is it brand new brokers? Is it somebody who is kind of doing well, doing 20, 30 transactions, 40 transactions, maybe 100 plus transactions, right? People have teams, and from the outside, they're considered successful, and they are so. In their industry, they're recognized, and they should be for their production. But who's this message for?
Every broker.
Are we saying that, we're recording this because we're any better than anybody else?
Every broker.
Every broker.
Every broker, if you do not have a foundation built to establish net worth, to have assets, this is for you. Because what happens when you start hitting 50 closings, okay, what does the average broker do a year?
Average broker, I think NRA numbers are what, 8 transactions?
8, but that's if you're including the top 1%.
Yes.
Okay, but let's just say it was 8.
Right.
Okay, What happens when you get to 50 is your lifestyle adjusts to that. When you get to 100, your lifestyle adjusts to that. And your lifestyle continues to adjust, right? Let's face it, we're human, right? I made that mistake. Hey, more closings. Guess what? I always told myself, I'll just go sell more deals.
Right.
I'll just go sell more houses.
No, and rightfully so. Why shouldn't it? Right? I mean, why don't you deserve, why doesn't your family, your kids deserve nicer homes to live in? Why don't you deserve a nicer car? Right? Why don't you deserve finer things in life? I mean, that's the reason why you work hard, right?
But here's the biggest difference, though, between being a real estate broker and having a job, right? If you're in a job or you have a career, you're getting incremental raises.
Correct.
What happens when you sell 100 houses this year and next year you have a bad year and you sell 50?
No, I mean, it's funny you point that out because just 2 days ago, right, we met with somebody, without mentioning, somebody who's very well respected, right? I mean, a leader by anything in our market, in the Chicago market, and anybody would look at this guy and go, oh my God, this guy's successful. I mean, he's a beast, yeah. Right? He's a production machine, the office, the whole 9 yards. And yet, this was the story. Right? Last year, some family things he had to take care of. A child came early. I mean, things happen. People have lives, yeah. Right? And rightfully so, he took some time off. Now he goes from suddenly doing 50, 60 transactions down to suddenly 30. Well, guess what? That's a
big
chunk
swing.
of swing. You're making 5,000, 6,000 in commissions. What do you take net home?
Yep.
Right? And then what do you have to show for it so you can build on? You know, that reminds me of an analogy. Somebody once said to me, they're like, Andrew, why don't you do this? Take all the receipts of what you spent last year, all the checks that you cut, the mortgages that you paid, right? And pile them. These are expenses. And then make a pile of all the investments that you wrote checks for. It says when the pile for the investments is larger than the pile for your expenses, that's when you know you're building wealth. Right?
That's a great point.
And reason we're recording this is not because, and I want to make this clear, is not because we're saying, oh my God, look at us, we made it. That's not, this is a journey for all of us. Maybe some of us may be at the 10-mile mark, and some of us may say you're just starting. But it's number one is it's never too late. Right? This is just a message as much as I wish somebody had shown me this when I quit college to get into real estate, because I thought I was investing, becoming a real estate broker. I had no idea, right? I had no clue. And that's kind of where the journey starts. So that kind of leads me to the next thing, which is something you pointed out, and we've talked about this, that we're in a transactional treadmill.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
What do you mean by that? What does that mean to you?
You're only as good as the next deal. So every morning you wake up and you're hustling, you hop on the treadmill and you're making your calls and you're prospecting and you're going out and doing showings.
Or you have referrals.
Or referrals. Whatever.
Right.
This, you know, the best brokers have referral networks and all
Sure.
that. But you still need to get on the treadmill and show up every day.
Right.
If you get sick, deals aren't going to happen.
And
you need to be on the treadmill.
See, but the fallacy at some point, used to be that it's like, okay, you have to do mailings. Then it was, well, you had to prospect, right? Then it was, well, but no, but if you just printed enough brochures and if you just outspent everybody, so then you go on radio, then you go on TV, right? And what people didn't realize, I mean, there were brokers that were making $100,000. They went to $250, then $350, then $450, and we know of people personally with $1 million or more GCI, gross commissions earned, that unfortunately there's nothing to show for it.
Yep.
Nothing as in zero. And in fact, if anything, they own income taxes on top of all of this, right? This myth that we were sold that just make more money so you will end up with more is just a complete fallacy.
Yes.
Number one, right? And I truly, truly believe this, that you know what it is? It's like life is like a treadmill to most of us, right? You finish college, you're supposed to get a fancy treadmill. What is a degree? It basically gives you the privilege of getting on a really fancy treadmill. So if you're an engineer, you're on the engineering treadmill, right? If you're a doctor, you get on a doctor treadmill. And it's just the only difference between working basically and not having a degree is that your treadmill, when you have a degree, is fancier. That's it. And the reason we get on a fancier treadmill is it's supposed to have stability. That was the old school way of thinking, right? I'm on a fancier treadmill than you, so guess what? I'm better off because I get more per hour I spend running on the treadmill. We're both running on the treadmill, mind you. And if both of us stop, neither gets paid. So you might be making $100 an hour. The other person running on a similar treadmill, maybe it's your brother or cousin who didn't finish college. Maybe the same thing. Maybe he's making $20 an hour, $30 an hour. Really doesn't matter. If your treadmill stops, your rate of spend, if the rate of spend is the same, guess what? You are used to a more luxurious, a bigger lifestyle. You're just both broke. It doesn't matter if you can't make a payment on a $100,000 house or a $600,000 house.
Same issue.
Either way, it's the same issue, right? And I bring that up because a lot of times I think that old school thinking of, guess what? I got a fancier treadmill is gone. Because guess what happens? Sometimes you might get to the office, your treadmill is sent for repairs. They're like, well, what happened to my treadmill? Which is my job? Well, we're just testing it out in India, in Korea, in China, in South Africa, around the world, right? And then they realize, well, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. So for right now, don't run on this fancy treadmill. Just run on another different treadmill. We have a substitute. But by the way, the substitute has a fancier name to it. It's a fancier model. It just doesn't pay quite as well as the other one. You're like, well, what do you mean? I've been running on this treadmill. Like, yeah, but it went to India for repairs. And guess what happens to that treadmill? That treadmill is never coming back.
Yep.
And then you have somebody who walks in your office or at your place of job. It really doesn't matter. We're all in the same position. That happens to be 10, 15, 20 years younger. That can pretty much out-internet you, right? And out-Facebook you and social media you. And people are like, well, it's just not fair. I don't know if it's fair or not fair. That's just how life is.
Yep.
Any thoughts?
You hit it right on the head. I mean, look at what's happening in real estate now, right? Technology, innovation, social is rocking everything, right? It's a whole new way of doing things that if you're that broker that hustles and does 50 deals or 100 deals a year, now you need to learn how to get on social.
Just to maintain those deals.
Just to maintain. So in addition to you worked your butt off to get to 100 transactions. Let's just say 50. You worked your butt off to get to 50 transactions a year, right? Working nights, weekends. Wow, great job. What kind of life do you now have? You're working. It's the worst life because you thought you had freedom and you don't because you're working nights and weekends. So you get to 50. But now social is the big thing. And new people are coming out with new products and how to attack it. Now you need to learn that. Do you have any more time to go out and learn that and keep the same pace that you're currently at? Just to sustain.
It's interesting because people are on two sides of technology, right? People are there who say, well, guess what? I love it, right? And I embrace it.
I love it.
Right, yeah. Right. People like you love it, right? There are people on the other side that say, well, guess what? I don't like it because it's not fair, right? They're sharing all the MLS data. All the information is available to the public, right? Now, does that mean that tomorrow the brokerage industry is going to disappear? No. Right? There's always room for people who are really good. Yes. No question about it. But one thing is for sure. The one thing is for sure is that there's going to be change. And it's going to be catastrophic. And it's going to be massive.
Yes.
And it's going to put a lot of people in a very, very, very bad position. Yes. That's just a fact of life, right? So I guess that's the next question is that we brought up these issues. We brought up the pain point. And the other issue, my biggest problem with the brokerage industry is this. Did anybody give you a 401k?
No.
Or a pension?
Nope.
Here's the biggest problem with the industry, right? And we have done it to ourselves. I'm not blaming anybody else. That we're in an industry where the amount of income you can make technically is unlimited, right? But so are the hours that you have to work.
Yes.
Right? And if you're not there, you're not getting paid. There's no sick day in the brokerage industry. The other part of it that is really, really horrendous is that by the time people become good in the real estate business in general, right? A few years have gone by, right? They've gotten probably a few white hair, right?
I've got several. Yeah.
Several, right? And what starts happening is we get so caught up just trying to stay ahead of making a living that what we forget is we forget to put anything towards our future.
Yep.
Right? The offices with the compliances, with all the things that today they have to deal with, the brokerage offices, they can't even, I think a lot of brokers are well-wishers, right? People who run brokerage offices, but they have enough worry on their head to try to keep agents compliant, to try to deal with all the headaches, all the nonsense in the industry. That, it just comes with growth. That this type of subject never comes up, right?
No.
And to me, this is like the holy grail that we're touching. Because some people clearly will listen to this. They're like, what are they talking about? It's not me. Well,
and you know what the solution is?
What is that?
Well, the solution that's being proposed, build a team.
Build a team. Oh, there we go.
Build a team. Are you going to hang your family's future? I don't know about you, but are you going to hang your about how I feel about it, but are you going to hang your family's future on a team?
Well, here's the thing, right? So I guess there's yin and yang of that, right? It's like anything else, right? With a team comes added responsibility.
Yes.
With a team comes a lot of added stress. Yes, can you add to your income 100%? No question about it. But what sounds like a great idea, and we have all tried it in different ways. You tried it on a massive scale, right? Well, how many people did you hire?
Close to 60.
Close to 60, building a team,
yes.
Right? And you had the numbers to prove for it. The problem is this, right? And literally millions of dollars earned in commissions. Why do you build a team? Now, if the goal is to do transactions, can you do hundreds of transactions? Absolutely.
Sure.
Thousands,
Yeah.
right? You can do. But net. See, the thought process is this, well, I make 100,000 by myself. I add a team member, I can double it. Well, it doesn't quite work that way, right? Maybe you can add a third as many transactions as you did. Then you add another team member. You think, well, I did 100, now I do 130 as a team. If I add one more, then I can do 160. It doesn't work that way, right?
No.
You have experienced this.
Absolutely.
Because as you add more and more and more, and the farther away you get from the center of influence, which is you, the rainmaker, the weaker the production gets.
100%.
Right?
And then you step up more to compensate for...
Because now you need an assistant.
Yes.
Right? Because you can't have two brokers just constantly hustling. You need somebody to take care of the transaction coordinator.
Yes.
Then you need somebody on the front end. Then you need your own office space because now I'm special.
Yep.
Right? I run my own team. And the reason we bring this up is not to say it's good or bad. That's your decision to decide what is right for any of us, right?
But you're still not building a future.
Correct.
It's-
I guess that's the reason why we go back to the whole idea of the broker, right? So what we're trying to say is this, that if you continue, what is the definition of insanity, right? Keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And I think a lot of times when people will come to a realization that what we're doing is not working, right? It's like the first step to any 12-step process, is that what we're doing is not working. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't make a respectable living. You might make a very respectable living, and you might have all the gadgets to show for it, from the cars, the house, all the stuff, right? A personal assistant, all the things that we consider a success. But the clear thing is this, that if you are in your 20s or 30s, or like I think the average broker is probably in their 40s, right? Or 50s or 60s. For the last 10 years worth of work that you did, or the 15 or the 20 or 30, would you say you have maybe 10,000 a year to show for it? Or 20? Or 30? Or 40? What do you think the answer would be?
Zero.
Yeah. Right? And the reason we bring this up is not to say that it's all, there's two types of people. Some people say, well, just run for the hills, and there is no solution. The other person says, well, guess what? I'm at a tough place. I got to make a change, right? And that's kind of where we're coming from, is that we as a industry, we as a group of professionals need to think about what we do. That does not mean at all you give up your day job, which is what puts food on your table, which is what makes you a good living, right? But making a good living and building net worth are two completely different things, right?
Yes.
Because a lot of people, if you have a college degree, if you were good at something, you can run a plumbing business, you can run an HVAC business, you can run a lot of other things, which maybe don't require a degree. They require skill set, but a different type of skill set, and you can make a good living at a lot of different things. So I think the first thing is a mental change, which I feel, this is just from my end, maybe Rosario will relate to this, is that sometimes when we get in the industry, right, and we start doing well, number one, we consider ourselves entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Right? And I hate to ruin somebody's day today, but we're not entrepreneurs. We do transactions. That's all we do, and nothing wrong with it. But we broker transactions, and that is I'm not at all saying it's not a valuable function, but first of all, I think somewhere along the way we need to get our ego in check.
Yes.
Right? Would you agree?
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing is that we need to figure out that, are you in a transactional business? And there's nothing wrong with being in transactional business, but at some point we need to think about is, are we setting aside assets for tomorrow? In case something happens, in case, well, it's not in case if you're going to get old, you're going to get old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess what we're trying to say is this, is that you have to start thinking about what happens. And my next question comes up is this, that why is it that our commodity that we tend to sell is obviously real estate for all of us, right? So if we sell real estate, we supposedly believe in real estate, and we supposedly are the best at finding the best deals.
Why aren't we buying it?
Why aren't we buying it, right? Why don't we keep some of these for ourselves? You know the answer to that?
I think there's several factors. I think one, not understanding the mechanics of it. What does it take to build that? I think,
but you know, man, we're the experts at transactions.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's the misconception is you need money, right? You need a lot of money to do it. Second, perhaps the fear of becoming a landlord,
right? Thinking,
oh, I need to manage someone or I need to manage a property. When you're managing yourself all day, why not manage something that can actually grow, right? I don't think it's skill set. This is what we do.
See, I think you know what the difference is? That it's the difference between, this is just my way of looking at it, right? Is the difference between owning a hospital and being the doctor who does trauma surgery, or being a nurse that works at the hospital, right? So they're like, well, do you know how the hospital works? They're like, oh, of course, I do the surgeries. Just because you happen to do a small piece of it, you might know the overall picture. I'm not saying you don't, right? And I think a lot of times it's like the difference between the salesperson who works at a car dealership versus owning the dealership. That doesn't mean you don't understand the car business. You understand, obviously, if you have experience, you've done well at it, you understand the business. But do you really understand the business, right? The bigger picture. And I think that's number one. Number two is, I feel, is that what we don't want to tell ourselves is that what I'm doing, man, it took me 10 years to figure out how to just make a living. Now, who are you that's going to walk into my office or on a recording tell me that maybe there might be a chink in my...
Yeah, something's broken. Yeah.
Right.
That I need to fix. Yeah.
And guys, think about it. If you're listening to it, we're nobody, right? We're not telling you. It's just what we're laying out is the reality of the industry, right? Because we've experienced it, and we're saying you got to think about other options, right? And what has always bothered me, and this was the reason that led me from doing just transactions as a broker to doing flips, which was the first mistake, right? At least for me, because I went from a good treadmill that pretty much hummed, all I had to do was prospect and take listings, to on a very fancy treadmill where, guess what? If it's raining, it's not the seller's problem, it's my problem.
Yep.
Because now I just inherited all those houses. You have 5, 10, 15 flips sitting on the market. I mean, let me ask you a question. Think about this, right? So let's say this year you're going to do 10 flips because you're going to invest, right? Every flip, supposedly, you make $30,000 per flip. Man, that sounds great. It's on that thing, the investors make all the money, I only get a brokerage commission, I get $4 or $5 grand, the investor makes $30,000, he's better off. Let's examine this. Are you better off selling 50, 60 houses and not having any headaches. If it's a cold winter, if it's a good winter, all you have to do is just hustle a little bit more.
You don't freak out when it rains out.
Yeah, you don't. Versus having 10 flips that you're carrying on the market.
I'd take the brokerage commission all day.
The brokerage commission all day, right? So we're not saying that just because it's the neighbor's yard, it's greener. That's not what we're saying. What we're trying to say is this, that for me, the transition was from being a listing agent to thinking I was going to invest to start doing flips, which I just found a fancier treadmill.
Yep.
To finally realizing that what am I building for the future? I was making $200,000-300,000 just selling houses, right? I didn't need to do flips to do that. All I did was take on further headache and further stress. But then the final transition, what took place was when I started realizing that if I'm willing to find properties for my clients, and I take pride in doing the right thing by the clients, right? And find them good deals, why not keep some of these properties for myself? Because the other piece, which I did not want to admit to anybody, and I didn't live a very fancy lifestyle, at least not at the time, right? I was the conservative guy because I didn't want to spend a lot of money. And still, if you really ask the truth, at least for me, and I think a lot of brokers would relate to this, if somebody had said, Andrew, last 5-6 years you've been doing well, I would say, of course, man, look at my production, right? Somebody said, well, can you write me a check for $100,000? I would have choked because I really didn't have a lot of money saved up. And if somebody asks a further question, where did it go? I would want to run out of the room. You relate to that?
100%. When I said I'm the poster child of the broke broker, it's because I'm the poster child of broke
broker, right?
I mean, I've GCI north of 8 million,
right?
In a few years. Right. I mean, keep in mind, 7 years.
That's a heck of a lot of money.
$8 million through my hands, and this doesn't include rehabbing prior to that.
Right.
You know, having $300,000-400,000 a year, and where'd it go?
So I guess what we're leading to is this, right? The guys, for all of us, doesn't matter where you are. This is a thought process that you need to think about. Now, mind you, if you have a rich spouse, a rich husband, rich wife, somebody who has tons of money squared away, maybe
you're like, you.
Yeah, it's not for you, right? It's not for you. For most people that we know, and we know an awful lot of people that we respect, right? But that's not the situation for them. And the reason, Rosario, for me, I did a switch from really doing flips was because what I figured out was one thing, that all I was doing was I had two choices in life. I go get a job somewhere that I'm running on somebody else's treadmill, right? And not a bad idea. You can make a paycheck. Or I run on my own treadmill, which is a brokerage, run my own flips, which is same thing, just a fancier treadmill, right? Or I get some tenants running on wee little, small little, simple little treadmills for me. And initially, my thought was the same thing that I know a lot of brokers will think, which is, well, I know renters. I don't want to deal with that headache. I don't want to worry about that stuff. Oh, I'm going to fix the 2 o'clock toilets. I mean, I don't know why the toilets have to clog at 2 o'clock in the morning, how many people use the toilets at 2 o'clock in the morning, but that's just it's an excuse not to do anything.
Yes.
Right? But the shift that I realized that I made was in 2011, was that what if I got in the business of owning rentals? There's a difference, right? There are landlords who own a rental or two and screw it up. There are people who own offices and run them well. What if I just owned assets that I could buy because of the skill sets that we have?
Yep.
Why I'm recording this is because we as a group of people have a skill set, which if you don't, there's something wrong you're doing in the brokerage industry, which is we need to learn, number one, what a good deal is, what a good buy is, what a truly discounted property is, and not the property that your client wants to buy for 10 or 20% less. That's not what we're talking about, right? Properties with true equity. Number one, how do you buy them, and how do you buy them with very, very, very little funds? Because most people, I was not starting out with hundreds of thousands of bucks saved up. It was not the case at all, right? So how do you buy in a year or two period 5 to 6 rental houses and get them all paid off. Right? Now, some people might say, well, I don't like houses. I want to invest in the stock market. Fine. Do that. Right? If that's what you feel safe with, that's okay.
Do something.
Do something.
Yeah.
Right? What the reason for this recording is that maybe somebody listening to this will relate to where we're coming from. Right? That what rentals is especially if they're paid off. Like if you learn the system, which is in 2 years, 5 to 6 properties, get them all paid off or paid down. They don't even have to be all paid off. But guys, listen, the thought process that we want out of this particular recording is that think about what you do and think about the treadmill that you have. And number one, don't knock the treadmill that you have because that's the one you got, right? That's the one you have to deal with. But is there another choice? Because what I'm here to say is this. There are other treadmills that your tenants will run on. And at the end of every month, it'll produce a pretty good income. And you can't just have one. You need 5 or 6. What you need is a business of owning small little, very simple little treadmills that the tenant keeps running. If they stop running, it's called getting the tenant out of the property and putting a new person to start running on that treadmill. Because if you have enough people running on enough treadmills for you, instead of you doing the running, guess what happens? Now, if you truly want to go on a vacation, go to the beach, do what you want to do, you don't at least have to worry about your basics. Yeah. Right? Because my belief is this. For most people, if they had $4,000 or $5,000 coming in, right? Forget about a lot of money. Every single month. It would at least, you don't have to push the pedal as hard, right? You could lay off the pedal a little bit. And if you can learn how to lay off the pedal a little bit, guess what you can do? It's easier to double that than it is, because the fallacy that we've been sold is that, well, guess what? You're going to get in real estate. It's America. You're going to be an entrepreneur. You're your own boss. And over time, real estate agents charge a lot of commissions. You can make a lot of money. I'm here to say there's something wrong with the system. Any thoughts as we wrap up this? And I know we have planned additional things because we don't want to just basically say, okay, this is the pain point, let's leave it here, right? Because that's just half the message.
So I want to go back in time 7 years.
Sure.
And then I want people to think for themselves, where were you 7 years ago? What were your ideas? What were you thinking? What were your goals? Right? Fast forward to today. How different is life? Have you achieved your goals? What have you put aside? What kind of foundation have you built? Now think 7 years from now, right? And what does your life look like? For me, going back 7 years, if you'd have told me over the next 7 years I was going to do 8 million in GCI and be number one and go through all these, transitions, I wouldn't have believed it. But if you would have gone back in time and told me, okay, start buying some rentals, start putting something aside, what could I have built over the last 7 years?
$7-8 million portfolio. No questions asked. No questions asked, right?
And that portfolio, contrary to my GCI, would still exist.
Would pay you today, would pay for your kids' college, would pay for your retirement, and will be a legacy that you leave. So I guess, I love that analogy actually, is roll back the clock 7 years, right? And sitting here today, right, in the office as we record this, is 7 years ago, we were 2010. Scary time in real estate.
Yep.
Scary time, right? 2010, this is September of 2010, is the first time I ever bought a rental property, ever in my life, right? From that point on, as much, I wish I could say, everything's been hunky-dory. I wish, right? It's been more growth in that process, and I'm not talking about growth in terms of financial growth. I'm talking about mental growth, right? Is what I'm talking about, than ever before, which I wasn't sure I was ready for, right? But guys, think about this, right? In that time, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 houses that you would have been happy to find for your clients. You would take pride in, oh my God, look what my client did. And I've heard this so many times in offices you walk through, and they're like, man, I got my client a great deal. And as proud as you should be as a real estate professional to provide that service, provide that knowledge, I think if you could say, I got that property for my kids' college fund, I believe you would be even more proud. And I think that's what we have to think about, is that why not us? Why not me? And more importantly, why not you? Is it because self-esteem? And clearly, if you're in real estate, whatever your issues are, a lot of you have probably overcome that because you've had to. We have to interact with the public and try to put our best foot forward. They can pick any agent. I know you think you're special, and I think I'm special, and Rosario especially
I definitely think I'm special.
You're special, right? But why would somebody list a property with you? You're really that much different than somebody else. Maybe you care, and I don't doubt that, right? Maybe you're knowledgeable. Maybe you have a lot of experience. Sure, we all have different skill sets. But my point is this: if you're willing to work this hard for your clients, why not for you? Any final thoughts as we wrap up?
I don't think I can follow that.
So we just wanted to, put some thoughts together. And I think a lot of people who are in those shoes, I mean, if you're brand new, you're listening to this, fantastic, right? It's
great time to start.
Great time to start. And I think brokerage is a phenomenal industry, right? Gives people like you and I a chance really to make a dent. Otherwise, we'd be in deep trouble, right? But I think this is a message that needs to be thought of. And I think if you can think about one thought that you can walk away with is that I guess I'll say two. One is the transactional side of real estate as a broker. And then number two thing is, why not you? Why do these transactions not show up in your bank account versus taking a 2.5% or 3% or 4% or 5% in some cases of a deal? See, somebody else is getting 95% of that transaction, the benefits of it. And you and I are left with anywhere from 2.5%, 3%, 5, 6%, whatever brokerage commissions are in your market. So listen to it. We would like you to listen to the message a couple of different times. I think you'll come to realize that we all have been or are in the same boat. Having said that, keep an eye out for the next recording.
Thank you.
Very good.
I think it was great.
Okay.